Welcome to Tech Beyond Gender podcast. I'm your host, Meena Satish Kumar. Today with me, I have Julia Bower, co-founder and CTO of Fractional Directory, joining us for this conversation. Welcome, Julia. Nice to have you here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Meena. I'm Julia. I'm the co-founder and CTO of the Fractional Directory, and I'm sure we'll get into more details about that later. I am a software engineer by my background, and I joined the world of tech in 2014. So I've been around for a little while now. I have worked in New Zealand and London, and I'm actually originally from Russia. My family immigrated here when I was really young.
Yeah, cool, Julia. Now, tell us more from the beginning. What first drew you into technology? Why software engineering? What sparked your interest in tech?
Good question. I have a bit of an unsatisfying answer. Nothing drew me in really, and this is not what I had planned to do with my life. Um, so I barely scraped through in high school to get uni entrance, and I actually failed my computer studies class in high school. And I was told, don't ever get into software. And I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, what degree to study. I always thought, you've got to finish high school, you've got to get a degree, and then you've got to go work. So what was I going to study? And I remember my parents gave me a newspaper article, and it had the top 10 paying white collar jobs in New Zealand. And one of them was software developer. And that's actually what my dad does. My dad's a software developer as well. So I thought, okay, I'll do that too. So I signed up and enrolled in a BSc and completely crashed out my first year of uni. So I wasn't used to the world of having to study hard and focus in class. So after a year of wasting my time at uni, I actually changed to AUT. And the reason for that was I was under the impression that it was more of a hands-on environment rather than sort of lecture theatres, which is definitely how I learn better. And it was a bit of a process to get in after doing so poorly in my first year, but that basically put the fear into me. And I actually ended up being the top first year student for my degree at AUT. I got 8 A pluses in my first year. So from crashing out completely and failing everything to getting 8 straight A pluses, just goes to show that the environment and your mindset is really important. So to answer your question, I wasn't really drawn to it that much, but I got into it and then I started getting good at it, and then the passion came from there. And now I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Wow, this is interesting. So, how easy it is for someone to actually think, okay, tech is not for me if I have not done well at school or if I've not done well at university. So, it's like if you had made a decision right at your high school or at the first year of university saying, this is not going to work for me, what a tragedy would that have been, right?
I think it was just sheer stubbornness of like, okay, well, I decided to do this, so I'm going to finish it one way or another. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't kept going. I had literally no other plans. So I'm glad it worked out in the end.
Yeah, so I have a mentor. His name is Sri Ravi Shankar. He always says that if you start something, make sure that you see it through to the end. Don't drop anything in between. And that has been my mantra as well. So even at times I would pick up something and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm not good at it at all. Am I going to survive through this? But then by sheer endurance, right, you just keep going and slowly and gradually you get better at it. It's a process like anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, the like D1, D2, D3, D4, like competency. D1 is like, you don't know what you don't know, and D4 is you're an expert and you can do it in your sleep. I'm really bad at being in the D2 level. So when I'm not good at something and I don't know or care about it, I'm happy to stay there. But as soon as I start learning something, I get really annoyed that I'm not good at it. And so I usually do everything I can to get out of that and into the sort of higher competencies. So once I commit to something, like you said, you have to see it through.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So straight A pluses at universities, and then what did that land up in? Like, what was your first job like?
Yeah. Well, I hope no one that gave me that first job is listening, because the only reason I applied for this one in particular was because I was lazy and I forgot to apply for grad programs. Apparently, you have to apply for grad programs like 6+ months in advance, and I had no idea. And so there were only a few openings left for the following year after I graduated. So I applied for this one, and it was at IAG, which is a big insurance company in New Zealand. They run State, AMI, and many other brands. So I got into the grad program there in 2014, and that was a two year cohort. And honestly, I'm really glad I got there. Within the first year, I had completely changed my trajectory, even from when I graduated. So I started as a .NET developer, and after about 6 months or so, kind of realized that I wasn't into it. And I saw the digital team on the other side of the floor, and they were doing what was sort of the early stages of front end development. You know, Angular JS was just sort of becoming a thing. Um, so I started hanging out with those teams and sort of like asking if I could join and begging my manager. And after a few months, I think they all just got sick of me. So they let me get in, they let me go into the quote unquote digital side where we started doing front end development. And I guess the rest is history, really. From there, it was Angular JS, Angular 2, React. And then I've sort of stuck with that ever since then, and only been a front end dev my whole career since then.
Oh, okay, cool. So how long were you a front-end developer for?
I mean, I still am. I'm
Oh,
still
cool.
I'm still very much on the tools, but I can't really say front end anymore. I'm just everything. So I'm the CTO and I'm doing the strategic thing, and then I'm also the engineer for the team, and I write everything.
Cool. So tell us more about how you moved from being a developer to a co-founder. What was the journey like?
Uh, So after I moved, I was working in London, and we moved home during COVID and started a family, as a lot of people do then, because you think, well, I can't travel, I can't do much else, let's have kids. And once I had my first daughter, it was really a like, what am I doing now? Like, I'm a, senior front end engineer. I love my job. I love what I do, but what's next? I had no idea. And I had a mentor, and, I had great managers and great people around me, but nobody could help me figure out what was next. And it was really up to me, right? So I actually met my co founder in antenatal classes when we were having our first kids. And she was operating as a fractional CRO. And so she taught me about what fractional was. And I sort of saw that as an opportunity for an alternative career path. And then a couple of years later, how we actually started the directory was just by doing an experiment. So the aim at the time was just to map the market in New Zealand who was working fractionally and surface the talent, because there was all this stuff going around of like, there's a talent shortage, there's no one good here. And actually, that wasn't the case. We knew that there were a lot of people, return Kiwis or immigrants to New Zealand, that had brought huge amount of skills, but because they weren't networked into the country, they were just about invisible. And so they were all operating fractionally. And yeah, we used the directory as an experiment to surface that talent, show everyone who was here, and it sort of grew from there. And we weren't trying to start a company, we weren't trying to be founders, but we saw the need for it and we saw it take off. And so we sort of grudgingly decided to make that a startup. And I went full time with this a few months ago.
So, what is fractional? Tell us more about it.
Yeah, good question. Everyone's probably wondering, what the heck are you talking about? So, fractional is basically a fraction of your time. And the way that we define it is fractional leadership. So, specifically, that top tier of C and C minus one roles. I know that there are a lot of other definitions of fractional, but this is what we're sticking to. It's just that top layer. And the reason for that is because we talk about it as strategic work and being the top level in the business that you're working in. So, a fractional leader is a senior level domain expert and that fully embedded in a company, but for a fraction of their time. And so, yes, that means part time, and people can sort of create a portfolio career based around fractional engagements, but they could also be consultants, advisors, and sort of pick and choose bits and pieces of work to either make up a full FTE or 50%, and they can scale their capacity up and down based on their life and their situation.
Okay, so this is like being a part of a board, which is what I'm familiar with.
Not quite, close. So if I was the fractional CTO of, say, a startup, that means I'm the CTO. I am the expert. There is no full timer, there is no job share. I am the person. I'm just not there full time. So that means that I can get the job done in 2 or 3 days a week, for example. And this works from startups all the way up to corporate enterprise levels. The term that's been used a lot historically is like interim, which is kind of like fractional, and that's having someone warm the seat for a time. But the flip side of that is you could be a fractional CFO, CMO, and you're just not there all the time because the company doesn't necessarily need or can afford that full-time equivalent. And so it's sort of the start of this growing industry of flexible working arrangements, portfolio careers, and fractional is that leadership layer of portfolio careers.
So, it will also include people who want to work remotely from anywhere around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. You could be an in-person fractional, you could be a remote fractional, just like with any other work. And the way it started, I believe, was virtual CFOs and virtual CMOs. Those
Mhm.
those two roles lent themselves really nicely to remote and part-time sort of work, and it's just sort of taken off from there to the entire C-suite and leadership layer.
So, do you deal with only the technology sector, or have you got roles across all sectors in the industry?
So we don't focus on any industry at all. Yes, a lot of it is in tech, but there's a lot of great use cases outside of the tech sector. For example, older sort of, say, construction companies, blue collar companies that are bringing in a heap of revenue, but they don't know how to do their marketing, or they need bits and pieces of expertise to come in and out as required. So it's not just tech, it's everything, but we don't post the roles ourselves. What we do in the directory is we map the market and then people can provide us more details. And we sit there as a search engine, if you will, for businesses that want to hire fractional. So they can come in, they can either search by a role, they can search for a name, or they can go through a discovery process that helps identify people based on the challenges or the skill sets that they're requiring.
And if an individual wants to do something fractional, do they come and register with you?
Yeah, it's completely free to be on the site. We just take a cut of if we find you a job. So our North Star is getting jobs for fractional leaders and sort of growing that pie. But it's completely free to be on there. It's completely free for businesses to find you on there. And we just do the introduction piece.
Okay, so you do the introduction piece. So someone, say if I'm registered in fractional directory, someone can possibly find me and think, okay, I might be a good fit for a role. And then they need to contact fractional directory first for them to introduce me to them.
Yes. So we've tried to solve this problem with technology, and we can talk a bit more about why that isn't working. Um, Through the site, when you identify a fractional that you're interested in, you just click connect. And then that sends a request to us. We broker the connection. Basically, we reach out to the fractional and say, this person's inquiring after you. Are you interested? And then we put that connection together.
Awesome. So do you have people from globally, I would assume, registered with your directory?
Yeah, so we currently operate in regions. When we first
Hmm.
launched, it was New Zealand only, and we launched with 43 profiles. And now we have, I think, just short of 2,000 global. I say globally, but we're only focusing on the Asia Pacific region. So we've got a directory in New Zealand, Singapore, Western Australia, and then we launched to Sydney a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, awesome. Great. So, how it is to be in this role from being a developer? You mentioned that you're still hands on. So, how are you hands on being a co founder and a CTO?
It's a daily challenge, that's for sure. Because they're so different, being in the weeds and being tactical and working on delivery, as opposed to sort of stepping back, zooming out, putting on the CTO hat, as I say, and thinking, about the strategy, the decisions, the long term, and everything. It's definitely, I would say, I get a lot of whiplash from having to sort of zoom in and out constantly. And so my current challenge is actually figuring out the best rhythm to do that in, because I don't think people necessarily have to do a lot of both all the time. Or in a startup, I know it's definitely more prevalent where you have to do both at the same time. But I guess the aim is to get out of that as fast as you can. And I'm finding out why, because having to do like plan the product, build the product is yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a struggle. If anyone's got any tips, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah. So, how is the startup industry in New Zealand? Like, are there many female co founders like yourself or like female CTOs like yourself in the industry?
That's a really good question. I think there'll be more female co-founders than CTOs for sure. And that could be because of a lower barrier to entry. However, they're really hard to find. And I've connected with a few female leaders, but there's just not that many around. And it sucks because you can't be what you can't see, right? And I remember when I was prepping for the Tech Rally talk in May, I literally went onto LinkedIn and I typed in CTO in New Zealand and I scrolled through till I found a female. And I think it was page 4 that I found the first one. And so, yeah, they're around, but there's a lot less of them.
Yeah, so I remember having conversations in the past with a couple of co founders who thought that the industry can be quite brutal when it comes to funding. For females, it just becomes way too challenging to get any funding request accepted.
I can relate to that firsthand. We're currently doing our first raise now that we've taken this full time. And I don't even know really how to describe it, but it's been challenging and it's been painful. This is the first time we're doing it as well, so we're sort of learning as we go. But there's always a lot of great feedback, a lot of sort of positive noise around it, but the funding doesn't come, you know? And I find that really interesting. I don't know if we would have had more by now if we weren't women. I don't know. It could be maybe our business model is terrible. Maybe it's a bad idea. I don't agree, but um, that's a really interesting one to think about because we are two female co-founders, and yeah, it's a challenge, that's for sure. And the 3% of funding goes to women. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Now, do you think that situation will be different elsewhere globally because you're just starting to expand your operations globally?
Well, maybe, yeah. We're actually operating more out of Singapore at the moment. We are in the process of being based out of Singapore as opposed to New Zealand. And there's definitely a bit more positive movement in that area for sure.
So, what were some of the very early challenges that you faced, both technically and operationally, when you started Fractional Directory?
Yeah. So when we first started, I was working full time and I was freelancing and I was solo parenting. So the biggest operational challenge was capacity, but I think it set us up in a really good way to be building from such heavy constraint right from the beginning. And technical challenges, I guess the thing for me was coming from a corporate background, like I'd worked in corporate up until that moment. Oh, in fact, I was still working in corporate as I was building. And to function in a startup, you basically have to like throw away most of what you've learned in corporate and really, really shift your mindset to that scrappy, moving quickly kind of thing. Like, whereas in a previous job, I might have said, okay, everyone stop. We need to like make sure we've got the product backlog ready. Like, let's address any technical debt. And in a startup, especially a bootstrapped one, you're kind of just like, just keep moving, band-aids on, you know, just get everything going, smooth it over, we'll deal with it later. And of course, there's an element of like, you can't just let things completely fall apart. But if you're not a little bit embarrassed of what you've put out, if you're not a little bit like nervous about the quality of it, then you're moving too slow. And that's something, it's a real mindset shift and also letting go of that perfectionism. I think I've always had that perfectionist tendency. It's either I do it perfectly or I don't do it at all. And that's just not an option in a startup. If you want to survive, if you want to move quickly, you've just got to hit send, go live, and like deal with the rest later, which is a bit
Hmm.
scary.
Wow. So now do you have others working for you, or is it just you and your co-founder at the moment?
We've got a core team of 4. So that's our
Mhm.
full-time team. And we also bring people in and out as required. So we like to eat our own dog food at the Fractional Directory. We've used a lot of fractional leaders. And we don't discriminate. We use consultants, advisors, freelancers. We've used them all. And the reason for that, one is budget. Obviously, as a bootstrap startup, you don't have much money to be playing around with, but also knowing that getting that like top level leader to do something is much more valuable in a short period of time than getting someone for, say, cheaper and keeping them for longer or bringing someone in part time, full time. And we also really like to bring in people that focus on one really specific area and the thing that they're really good at and the thing that they really love to do. Because you see much better results when people are doing what they care about. So, for example, we had a few design challenges, and instead of sort of bringing in one generic generalist that could do it all, we actually went with 3 different people, which was obviously a bit of a logistical challenge, making sure everything was aligned. But having 3 people doing one specific piece each that they loved and that they were really, really good at definitely yielded us better results. So yes, so we've got our core team, we've got our slightly outer bench of people that come in and out regularly, and then we have sort of that wider orbit of consultants, freelancers, fractionals that we're all just a great big team. Yeah.
Yeah, it just really amazes me. Like when you mentioned that people come in and out, especially at the leadership level. So, are these people who are currently employed in huge enterprises who are doing this part time? Do you normally see people like that? Or these people are just consultants who just want some short term projects to keep them going?
We have a bit of everything, honestly. We've had people that are currently in full-time employment and doing some extra work on the side, people in part-time employment that are looking to fill their portfolio a bit more. It really depends on sort of what we're looking for, because for some things it's obviously just a really short-term consulting engagement and they can add that on to what they're already doing. Some people, while they're working full-time, are really behind the cause and they've been with us right from the beginning. So they make that time, whether that's a day a month or 2 days a month, they sort of put those hours in bits and pieces to get it done.
Mhm.
So yeah, we've had people from startup all the way through to corporate, part-time employed, full-time fractional, that are making up their portfolio with our engagement. It's really, really varied.
Wow, very interesting. I just find this concept very, very intriguing because this is not something that I'm very familiar with. So, how did you come to know about this? Has this been around for a while?
I think it's been used for a number of years, and there's a lot of people that when they find out about fractional, they go, "Oh, I've already been doing that for years. I just didn't know what to call it." So it's not necessarily a new concept, but what we really wanted to do was help to organize and shape that market, that industry as it grows. And so it's been gaining a lot of momentum in the last few years. For example, when we launched to New Zealand in 2023, just over 2 years ago, and we had 43 profiles, and we saw a 13x growth in 2 years in that region alone. So it's taking off really, really, really quickly, and we're right on sort of that forefront of the industry. So it's been around, but it's also for a lot of people, it's a little bit of a mindset shift because we're all used to traditional consultants and advisors. Those roles aren't embedded into the company. They sort of sit parallel to the team. They don't necessarily take on big strategic pieces of work. They advise or they evaluate, they write reports, they give suggestions, they don't necessarily implement those changes. Whereas a fractional leader comes in, they hit the ground running and they go, I am the CMO for this business. What's our marketing strategy? And they build that whole piece up themselves and with their wider team. And the other reason that it's really good is part of this flexible workforce movement, right? Especially after COVID, everyone's realizing there's so much more to life than the 9 to 5. Spend 2 hours commuting in the office all day, every day. You know, everybody wants more balance. Well, not everybody, but most people want more balance, more flexibility. And I feel like this is just the way that work is going. This is the future of work. And to answer your question, how I found out about it, how I got into it, was when I met my co-founder, Michelle. She was already working in this way, and I had absolutely no idea what it was. So that just goes to show, I'm in tech and this was being used and I'd never heard of it. So it's gaining momentum really quickly.
Hmm. Very nice. So, how do you and your co-founder complement each other's strengths?
That's a good question. Uh, I laugh because Michelle and I are like two sides of the same coin, or like a yin and yang situation. I actually don't think I could have found a better co-founder. And the funniest part was that first we didn't know what the other one did for work when we met. We just became friends as parents, new parents raising our kids. Realized we had really complementary skills, and are just very lucky that it works really well. But the reason it works really well is that she's very much on the business side, sales, revenue, CEO, all of that. She has all the business side. I do all of the tech side, and we respect each other's strengths. And then we overlap right in the middle, and that can cause friction. But I found because we're coming at it from very different perspectives, it actually works really nicely. So we overlap in things like design, product, marketing, especially things that we don't necessarily have as roles in the company. So everyone, has to take on those missing pieces and fill the gaps. And where we overlap, because we have, really different views. I often have the quite zoomed in view. She often has quite a zoomed out view. And while we can do both, it's where we lean into our strengths and we just complement each other right in the middle. And that's not to say that it's easy, for sure.
Mm.
But I think if you have a co-founder and you can respect the lanes that you're in and the things that you're really good at, and then in the middle you have your strong opinions loosely held, then it works really well.
Interesting, right? Especially, I find it's the skill is required to be able to appreciate each other's strength and just keep moving in an industry which could be very, very changing.
Yeah.
Um, so, like with fractional, do you have many other players in the industry like yourself doing this, offering this service? Now, this reminds me of this word temping, right?
Hmm.
Um, Years ago, I've done some temping roles in between jobs, like some temporary role. It could be a data entry role and things like that. Is this something similar to a temping role?
Good question. Um, Let me see. So I think temping is more tactical roles, and I think I could compare that more to, say, contracting or freelance, where most often temping will be something where you can sort of just sit down, you're an individual contributor, and you can do that piece of work, get in, get out, do a project, as opposed to fractional, where yes, you're only part time, and yes, you aren't there forever, but when you are there, you are the person, you are the leader, you are completely and fully embedded in the company. You go to all the meetings, you're on all the emails, you are essentially a full time employee, you just aren't there full time. So I think that the key difference there between fractional and temping, contracting, all the rest is the strategic work, the strategic focus versus the tactical focus. So are you there to complete a project, or are you there to lead the strategy in your entire vertical for the business?
You got many competitors in the market?
So when we first started, I think we were most likely the very first. And what we've seen over the last few years is a lot of marketplaces popping up, a lot of fractional firms or fractional kind of agencies coming up. And the really cool thing about that is that we can work with everyone. If we are the directory and everyone else is a marketplace, a firm, or an agency, is we can plug in right in the middle of that ecosystem with them, and we don't compete with them. They can use us for free to find talent. That's the really cool thing. So the way marketplaces work would usually be you apply to enter the marketplace, or you would be paying a premium to be listed. It would be a curated list of talent, or pre-vetted, or anything on top of that. And an agency would be, sort of like a collective of fractionals that work together, that sort of jump into each other's engagements and work as a team. Whereas we're completely agnostic of all of that. We just show you who's there. We show you who's there. We have all of the information of who's there, and people are creating these beautiful, detailed profiles based on our talent qualification engine, which is very, very precise, puts everyone in their unique but sort of perfectly shaped box. And from that, we can get a lot of insights into the market as well. So we put out an annual market report on what's going on in our regions. And for that reason, we're not so much a competitor as sort of the key ecosystem supporter for the rest of it.
Mhm.
And our North Star is to find jobs. That's all we want, is to get people jobs.
Very good. Very interesting. Now, looking back, what is the most rewarding part of your journey from being a developer to a CTO now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I guess the thing for me is looking back and sort of seeing how far I've come, and also knowing that I've managed to forge a new path, essentially. So I didn't go through your traditional corporate ladder. I didn't go, junior, intermediate, senior, tech lead, engineering manager, head of, VP, CTO. That path was not accessible for me personally. And it was, after I had my first child, not a desirable path either. And so the thing that is my biggest victory and the thing that makes me the most proud is being able to find a path here without having to do something that sort of goes against my values and the way that I want to live my life. And now I can show that to other people and hopefully be that role model for people who want to be leaders, who want to um, start companies, who want to do this, who want to do that, but they don't want to follow that traditional path. Hopefully I can be that role model.
That's beautiful. So, what would be your advice to young women who are mothers or single moms who are like, okay, I've taken a break in my career, I've got this child to take care of, and I also want to do something for myself, earn money. Where do I start? How do I go? What would be your best piece of advice for them?
A couple of pieces of advice. First, just do it. It's scary. You don't need to have all the answers, and be at peace with knowing that you'll figure it out along the way. When I started, I had no idea how I was going to have time to do this, to do that. I was working multiple jobs. I was trying to build a company. I was looking after my kids. But the the whole thing is if you want to do it, if you're passionate about it, if this is something that is going to bring you joy in your life, is you have to do it. Not just you should do it, but you have to, for your kids, for your family, for yourself. If it's something that you care about, not doing it is doing everyone a disservice. And the second piece of advice is to build your village. You you are going to rely on your village heavily, and whether that's family or friends, free resources, or paying people, getting a cleaner, getting a babysitter, getting a nanny, um, even getting someone to come and meal prep for you or paying for a meal prepping service, is get all of those bits and pieces organized into your life and have everything around there to support you, because you cannot do it all. And I know people say that all the time. Oh, you can do it all. You can't. Like, you can, but not all at once. I can't feed myself, sleep, look after my kids, work, clean, cook, do this, do that, and like do crafts with the kids on the weekends. Like, I don't have time for all of that. So how can I delegate the stuff that isn't as important to me? Cleaning, maybe a bit of cooking, um, putting my kids in daycare so that I can go and get a full day's work and then spend quality time with them after. It's all about putting a structure in place to enable you to do what you want. And then it'll all get easier.
What advice would you give to a 16-year-old who is like, oh, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that, I'm not too sure what's going to be my next career path, but I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to achieve something. And if they're lost, what would be your advice for them?
Oh, that's a really personal one because it's kind of like giving advice to my 16-year-old self. I guess I would just say pick something, do something, commit to one thing. Yes, seeing it through is really important, but also being realistic. You get a year or two into something and you think, I absolutely can't stand this. Obviously, choose a different path. But you just need to start. And then once you start, often what happens is either you like it or you find the thing that you like that's different. But if you don't start, you're never going to get anywhere. And know that you're going to make mistakes, and you should make mistakes. And if you don't, you're never going to get to where you should be by playing it safe. So start, take some risks. You can always change your mind. You can always go back.
Awesome. Are there any practices or philosophies that keep you grounded as a leader?
My children keep me grounded, and that is not by choice. So I think people think it's really strange that Michelle and I have been working on a startup right in this like really, really busy phase of having small kids. So both of our kids are 4 and 1. And people would say, oh, you're crazy. Like, why would you do that at a time like this? And it's actually great because being in the startup world, you could work 100 hours a week. You could, not eat, not sleep, and burn out really, really quickly. And we know that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And knowing that we have to go home to our kids every day and you can't burn out, you have to be present for them. You have to look after yourself so that you can look after them. That's the number one thing that keeps us grounded. So it's the thing that should be the disadvantage, but also we've turned into an advantage, I guess.
Mhm.
And then Michelle and I have a daily practice. It sounds a bit silly, but we high five every single day. Any tiny win, big wins, little wins, whatever, we high five. And the reason for that is understanding that this is a marathon and you're not going to get congratulated and patted on the back all the time, but you're doing the hard work, in those quiet moments, in the, sitting by myself in my office, in my activewear, looking homeless, pushing go live, for a new region. There's no witnesses there. There's no fanfare or congratulations. So we make sure that we celebrate absolutely everything and we high five several times a day.
That's a really nice practice. I'm sure there'll be many other people who are working from home or independent consultants who can actually relate to that, right?
Yeah, so if you're working by yourself, if you're a solopreneur or anything like that, I recommend you find yourself a co-working space and go high five someone else. I'm sure they would enjoy it.
Mm. So finally, what's next for you and Fractional Directory? So what's exciting for you? What are the exciting developments you're looking forward to?
So in 8 hours, I will be on a plane to Singapore today. So that is the immediate next exciting thing. Hopefully, by the time this comes out, we will be able to publicly talk about this. But we will be working on a pilot program with the Singapore government. I won't say anything more right now, but we're really excited with where things are going for the directory. And I imagine we'll be adding more regions within APAC and a lot of exciting stuff going on. So watch this space.
Great. Thank you, Julia. Thanks for making the time to have this conversation with us. It was so awesome to have you here on a weekend, quite early on a weekend with 2 kids and
Downstairs.
downstairs, and now getting ready to fly to Singapore for your next project. And it was such an amazing journey. I really enjoyed having this conversation about how you started off not being good in computer science. You questioned your career path, but you just kept going, and look at how you're thriving now. So, this is such an inspirational story for sure. Any final thoughts to our listeners, Julia?
Well, firstly, I just want to start by saying thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to be able to share my story, and hopefully someone can relate to something that I'm saying. Even if it sort of changes the path for one person, that would be a huge victory for me. And finally, I guess if you're interested in a portfolio career and working in a more flexible way, as I'm sure most people are, follow us on LinkedIn, have a look at the Fractional Directory, send me a message. I'd love to chat.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for your time, Julia.
Thank you so much.